This program is brought to you by Eide, a proud supporter and partner of Community 7 Television, where we're building community through communication. From the city to the county, there's a lot that makes up our unique community here in Montana, including our school systems. Each month, our partnership brings you the details about our schools, our community, and your tax dollars at work. Eide Bailey and Community 7, building community through communication.
Well, welcome to another special edition of Your Schools on Community 7 Television. I'm Schutz Wies, and I'm your host. Each month, we take a look at what's going on in Billings Public Schools, and what's been going on in Billings Public Schools has a lot to do with COVID-19, and that's the reason we're doing another teleconference here to keep our social distancing, and hopefully things are kind of ratcheting down, and we'll be able to, next time we talk to the superintendent, we'll be able to do it in a nice, warm studio. But today with us is Superintendent Greg Upham. Greg, thanks so much for joining us today.
I'm welcome. Thank you.
You bet. Let's give a little background. I know we had you on here before, but let's give a little background on, prior to this particular pandemic, what kind of things and planning stages did you guys do at Billings Public Schools to deal with these kind of difficult situations? And were you able to put any of those things into action as this pandemic has kind of rolled along?
You know, that's a great question, Schutz. To be honest with you, no, we don't have anything in our emergency plans for a pandemic, and that's been it's been extremely engaging. I think is a good word to use. The amount of decisions that have been made have been made, the impacts of those decisions, the changes. You'd make a decision one day, and 2 days later or the next day you might be changing it, and so it's just it's an amazing time to be in a leadership position.
Sure. Let's talk about some of the resources that you're maybe relying on to make some of those decisions. Are you in contact with the governor's office, with Riverstone Health, with the Office of Public Instruction? Where are you getting a lot of your guidance on what you can do and what you can't do, and how all that might work?
Well, you know, as this was unfolding prior to the governor's declaration of closure, emergency closure, I had called a meeting with our building administrators and said, we need to be prepared for a potential closure. And when that closure, we need to be prepared for I listed it as a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 plan. Tier 1 was a 2-week closure. Tier 2 was at that time from mid-March to mid-April. And then tier 3 could have been for the remainder of the year. So we had done some planning, which helped immensely, but I had been in conversations with Mr. John Felton, the county health officer. I've said that a lot. John has been absolutely outstanding. And we were actually conversing prior to any closure about what would it look like, because I was watching it unfold from the Seattle area. And then I had reached out to a superintendent who I had worked with in Helena, who is an active superintendent in the epicenter of the situation. And he and I had a couple conversations about what was happening. So I could almost look into the future and see what could be coming our way. That helped a lot, just in some of the staging and planning. And then the AA superintendents began speaking collectively together. We've met weekly for quite a while now. We do a video Zoom ourselves each Wednesday about 4 p.m. And that led to an opportunity to visit with the governor. We had a conversation with Governor Bullock and his team prior to about maybe the end of March or early April to talk through some of our issues, one of them being graduation and about the continued closures and what that looks like. And so that helped. But yeah, I think we networked very well. I was able to ask questions, and then our own team, our own executive team, and our building administrators and our teachers. But you know, it was really interesting, Schutz. One of the things I think that helped us the most was, and this was the brainchild of Dana Pulis at Kinetic Marketing, and Jennifer Owen was very instrumental in helping with this, and that was my daily Facebook Live broadcast. We were able to adjust in real time. Parents would have been communicating from the very beginning. I was getting information from our field, from teachers and administrators about what they needed to have communicated. That was extremely helpful in this.
Okay. So when you guys kind of walked through the tier one, tier two, tier three, when you realized that you were going to go from a tier one type situation where this is going to be actually be longer than what you were looking at, kind of what are some of the things that you had, graduation being one, but what some of the other things, it's one thing to be out of school for a couple of weeks, you can kind of get through that, but once you realize you're going to be out of school for the rest of the year, what were then some of the things you really had to think about as far as still providing education and those type of deals?
Well, actually, the tier one foundations set the course for it. I had shared with our building administrators to share with the field that I didn't want to wait at all to start instruction. I said, we need to begin instruction immediately and make sure we build the platform. We'll have a dual platform. We'll have a digital platform and we'll have a traditional platform, depending on the home's availability for internet. So my whole thinking in that was to establish a strong foundation in tier one to build from, so that we didn't have to keep changing or doing something different or retooling. I painstakingly worked with the district to say, okay, we want the foundation to look like this. The foundation's not going to change. We just need to get better at it. And that's why I say the situation with the daily Facebook Lives allowed us to adjust to the foundation that was laid, the digital foundation and then the traditional foundation. And we just built off that, Shoots, and we just got better and better and better and better and better just in the exchange back and forth with the home.
What did you find? I'm sure there was a pretty big disparity in staff's ability to provide a virtual classroom, right? You probably had some of your younger teachers who thought this was kind of wonderful, right? This is great. This is the technology I use with my kids every day. Yeah, we're moving to a little bit of format, but this is great. And then you probably have some of the teachers maybe on the older spectrum who are, this is coming at them probably first time they've ever used something like that. What were some of the challenges you found with that, and how were you able to overcome some of those hurdles?
Well, you're right. And what else drove the issue was that with the passing of the high school levy last spring, we were able to update some content areas of instructional resources. We'd say textbooks, right? But we only buy enough textbooks for a classroom set. The rest of it's all online. So some of the teachers hadn't had the opportunity to become familiar with the online resources until they had to become familiar with the online resources. And so we found that some people had played in the sandbox quite a bit and some people hadn't. And so the expectation was, well, we have digital curriculum and we have the electronic devices out there. So it's time to come up to speed. But we had instructional coaches that are built into the system that were very instrumental in getting professional development to the teachers. They're kind of some unsung heroes in all of this too, but they were working their tails off building instructional units and then helping people become more familiar with the technology. What else was interesting with this too was the concern of the privacy and issues in a Zoom classroom. And, is someone going to Zoom bomb me and those types of things. And our IT director, Brandon Newfer, worked really hard to get the security in place. And so far, knock on wood, we've been pretty good, but there was a learning curve. But it worked out, I think it worked out very well, Shoots. Again, part of it was establishing a very clear foundation to work from and then allowing people the latitude to get better at that and not changing. Well, if this isn't working, let's do this, or this isn't working. It was just like, no, let's stay the course. Here's the digital format we're using. Here are the instructional materials. Let's get better at it.
All right. Walk us through a little bit. Was there differences that you had to see as far as providing that digital instruction for the elementary grades, for the middle school grades, and for the high school grades? And what are some of those differences? What are the challenges for each of those grade levels? And then how are you able to overcome that during the course of the last few weeks?
I think if I speak from the family's perspective, probably the biggest challenge in K5, maybe K8, was we used there's different software. So there's Seesaw, and the Seesaw is a software that allows our classroom to communicate with the families and students. And we use that anyway. And then there's multiple others. And then you start incorporating the different instructional or curricular materials. And what families were saying is, gosh, if I just had one car to drive in this, it would be much easier for us. I get Seesaw, but I don't get Clever. And then Clever doesn't get me into the Journeys curriculum that we have. And I'm just throwing some words out right now, but so that was a big challenge, was learning all the software pieces that we have. And it actually is a reminder for us to simplify that if we can. And then in high school, it was probably easier for everyone other than the teachers who were not familiar with the new materials, the new online materials that were being used. And then in some cases in middle school, we purchased the new science curriculum and Amplify, and they loved it. They just said we wouldn't have been able to teach at a level. I think of all the content areas that the feedback to me, the Amplify Science in the middle school, the new, was probably the most resounding positive component to this. I don't think our middle school science teachers felt like they lost anything. In fact, I felt just in my understanding, I think they gained a lot more than others.
All right. You kind of stole my thunder on my next question then. So yeah, I'm going to ask you a little bit different one. What is the second biggest thing you've learned about Billings Public Schools? The first one being the Amplify Middle School Science. But what did you learn about Billings Public Schools that you didn't know before? That, going through this crisis, it's incredibly, difficult time. I'm sure you're kind of breaking and testing barriers here, there, and everywhere. What did you learn about Billings Public Schools that you didn't know before this all started?
Well, I think maybe even more so than Amplify Science, I was affirmed, reaffirmed, and then also taken back by the emotional challenges that this has presented. Just the social separation. I saw it, about midway through the first week of the Tier 1 closure, we started to get reports from students emailing their teachers saying, "I really miss you. I really miss seeing my classmates. I really miss this." And then I had a Zoom meeting with the 3 student body presidents of the high schools yesterday, and I asked them, I said, how has the social emotional part been? And all 3 of them said, and I'm speaking for them a little bit, but significant. One shared with me that suffered from insomnia early in this piece. And another one said, "I didn't realize how social I was. And I really miss that social interaction." And the third one said, basically, yeah, just a real disconnect of social components. And then on the staff side, Shoots, it was interesting too. I would see emotion out of our people, sometimes to the point of tears. We would be in a meeting, and I'm not saying it was everyone all the time, but I surely saw a lot more emotional issues that people were dealing with this. And I'm concerned about that. I'm hoping as we close the year out that the virus continues to allow us to expand back to normal, because I really think there's some important pieces of kids saying goodbye to their teachers, students, and for teachers too. There was a parade in one of our elementary schools that we probably shouldn't have had. But it was, beg for forgiveness at first. And the principal had shared with me that when the first time the teachers had the opportunity to see each other, and a lot of tears, a lot of emotion. So probably maybe the most significant issue for me, not knowing that it wouldn't be, but I was a little bit taken back by the level of emotion that we're seeing.
All right. Well, very good. We've talked a lot about how kind of regular education took place through the course of the pandemic. What kind of things did you have to do in the special ed realm? And there's a broad spectrum of how that needs to play out, but probably more so on those special ed kids that kind of really need to be in the classroom for learning to take. How did you guys kind of work through that stuff?
we have additional support staff, our school psychologists, our school counselors, the resource teachers that work with the students, the regular ed teachers that work with the students, our special services department. It was all hands on deck, coming at it from a lot of different ways, but still doing the best you can. And a challenge. I think it's a very good question, Shoots. I think our people did about as well as they can do, and at that point, doing our best to serve the needs of students. But whether we were able to get to a level, I think some families really struggled. I'm concerned about that. And what's interesting in all of this, not just special services, but the concerning point, and I shared this in a message or an article with the Gazette, is it seemed like the majority of our students are holding their own, right? I said that, holding their own, but the reality of that is, in this period of time, we don't hold our own, we grow. And that's the concerning part of this. Okay, we held our own, fine, but that's not good enough.
Sure.
So we have a large percentage of students that held their own, and the teachers working extremely hard, but holding our own is not where we would end up being. And then if you factor in your question to me, are some of our students with special needs and some of our students who struggle with learning, they didn't hold their own, so they've fallen further behind, and that's why we need to get back to school and get them caught up.
Where are you guys at now? And there's probably a bit of a juxtaposition here in, okay, let's get through the end of school year this year, but what does the fall look like, as far as, I'm sure you're planning for, okay, schools are open, everything's great, it's a regular school year coming back, but we need to think about what our students did lose during this time last year, to it's not exactly what we would do, but it's kind of sort of what we would like to do, versus, hey, we're right back where we were in the spring. Are you guys starting to work on that at all?
Well, you look at it from two different ways. You look at it from the academic side, and what does that look like? We won't know for sure just exactly where we are until we can get our hands on it, until we can get them back in school collectively together using our assessments, our tools, and we'll know then. It won't take us very long. Most of our teachers, if not all of them, know where their students are performing. I mean, they know those that are struggling, they know those types of situations. And as I said earlier, the social emotional piece has been critical. And what teachers have found is they're spent more time in this online working with just social emotional, just letting students in Zoom meetings talk to each other and talk to the teacher. And they recognize that right away, that the relationship piece of this is critical. So the academic piece is probably the easier piece to identify.
Mm-hmm.
The actual, now the physical safety, social distancing, procedures, protocol, practices, that's going to be more of a challenge, because, as I said early in the quest of all, with all the questions with this, was, how do you social distance and go to school? It's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
I mean, and then how do you put that number of students on a bus and make sure you have social distancing there? And I mean, we're going to do some things. There's no doubt about that, but it's going to be a challenge. And so we'll just have to work to the best of our abilities. We can stagger starts. We can add lunch times, lunchrooms. Or not rooms, but lunch times. We can do things at recess. But still, I mean, West High is close to 2,000 students. Shoots. I mean,
yeah,
there's some challenges in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm assuming that over the course of the summer, once school is out, then you guys will really have to take a hard look at what does school look like when we open back up in the fall.
Yeah, we're having those conversations right now, and we'll work through it, but there's some challenges for sure.
Oh, okay. Let's touch a little bit on school board. How have you guys been meeting? What type of issues? Is it all COVID all the time, or have there been other items on the agenda during the course of those meetings?
It's mostly been COVID. It's like Groundhog Day. You get up COVID. There's so many decisions that have had to be made, and so on and so forth. But we can start moving forward now with new business. And I've asked the trustees and I'll introduce the levy. We're going to start talking about the elementary levy. And I don't know if anybody paid attention, but Great Falls was successful in passing their elementary levy, and so was Helena. and Bozeman passed a levy too. I think that's very promising in the wake of everything that's gone on. I'm really pleased to see that, knowing the challenges that all communities have had, and very respectful of that. So we'll start that conversation here shortly and what that looks like. And some, graduation was a big part, but graduation was attached to COVID. So we really haven't had a chance to look at much new business shoots, but we'll start.
Sure. All right. You touched on it a little bit, but let's touch on it a little bit more. Talk to us about graduation, working through how that's going to, how is it going to look? And then how did you guys work through what is it going to look like?
Well, interestingly enough, when I had mentioned that the AA superintendents started meeting, that was number one. We knew that graduation was going to be a challenge at best, and watching it all unfold, because we're so different than other schools, just from the standpoint that of our size, and Billings is a standalone with that. It's almost twice the size of the largest district in the second largest district in the state. So, we wanted to do what we could do and within the safety parameters. And so when the governor gave local control back, that really triggered all of us to say, okay, what do our graduations look like? What are we doing? And then following the initial phase of the governor's reopening, we implemented the 10 students, the social distancing, and really the safest way, with no parents involved with it initially. That drew some pretty significant concern, which was, totally understand that. I mean, I'm a parent too. I was a high school principal. I get that. But I also knew in the back of my mind that things were changing so rapidly. What does that look like, and so on and so forth. So it was almost on the spectrum. And then sitting at my desk one day, just thinking, how do I get access? John Felton was absolutely outstanding through this whole process. And I needed to look deeper. I needed access to scientists. The one thing with this whole COVID piece is no one really knows. No one, you just can't go to someone and say, okay, should I turn right or should I turn left? Well, you can turn right. If you turn right, we don't really know what, but if you turn left, then this could, and that's the part that's been the most engaging and the most frustrating. Sure. So I finally just said, I need access to the best minds that we have available about what can we do, what can't we do, what should we do, what shouldn't we do. And that prompted my call to Jim Duncan at Billings Clinic. And he did an outstanding job of putting his medical professionals together. And then we had several meetings, and then went out to the Metro, the First Interstate Arena, Metro Park, and walked the venue, the capacity, how many people do we have? Can we social distance appropriately? Can we ingress? Can we egress? What are the safety measures? And it really helped me as a superintendent to gain access to that caliber of professional and that expert. And so I'm very pleased to have been partnered along with John Felton, who's been with us the whole way, and just a collaborative effort.
All right. Well, I got a couple more questions for you. We're going to start on a low note, but I promise we're going to come back to a high note. I promise we are. So talk to us. What has been the most trying moments of the last couple of months? What has been the hardest thing for you to deal with during the pandemic?
That's a great question. It isn't one thing. It's the volume of issues and decisions that need to be made quickly without having the experience other than 33 years, which has helped immensely. But just the day-to-day grind of the number of decisions and the impacts that those decisions are having. I think that's a holistic way to look at it. Not one thing was stands out. It was just the magnitude of the whole piece.
All right. Then let's turn that question on its head. What has been some of the best moments during the course of the pandemic?
Watching the community come together. Listening to families say, I'm getting emails almost daily now that are complimenting our teachers. that are saying, I just have, Mr. Uppenmite, you just need to know that Mrs. Jones did this, this, and this, and didn't have to, and Mr. Nelson did this, this, and this, and didn't have to, and the counselor did, all of that. Just seeing the humanity of it, and the extended efforts by our staff, and then, Shoots, what really was neat to watch the community support the backpack meal program. I think we initially had 300 students in a week or a week and a half later, we were up to 1,500 students, and the outpouring of support so that kids had food on the weekends. That was very heartwarming, and the families that have had to do what they've had to do through a lot of trial and tribulation, just the effort, the human effort in the human interaction, I've just thoroughly enjoyed.
All right. I know you guys have done a great job of getting information out there, and I know your Facebook Live is very popular and all that kind of stuff. Are those things going to kind of continue over the summer, or if people are I guess the question is, if people are looking for information over the summer, because usually that's a time when school's out and we're kind of checked out, where can they go to get information over the course of the summer?
Well, we'll post through our Billings School website. I plan on continuing with the Facebook Lives, especially through the levy, because there will be questions about that. I want to make sure that I'm communicating clearly, because with not having the ability to go into groups or being invited into groups personally, I have to be able to communicate with questions. So I plan on carrying that forward, and then just checking our website, and then checking the school's website. And we'll do that. And hopefully, as this lifts, I have the ability to get out and speak to groups personally. Sure. I'm tired of looking at myself through Zoom. I can tell you that. Yeah.
I think we all are tired of that at this point. So
yeah.
I'm guessing if there is a group that does want to have you in, just get a hold of your office and make an offer, whether it be in person, whether it be via Zoom. Just get a hold of you, and you're happy to visit with them about the levy.
Absolutely. I welcome that opportunity to come and visit. There's probably some interesting stories that people would want to know and stuff. So, but yeah, just contact my office or the school district, and I'm available.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to touch on that we haven't touched on, Superintendent Uppenmite? I think we've covered a lot of topics, but if there's something we missed, I want to give you a chance to put that out there as well.
I think just a simple thank you. Thank you to the community for pulling together in all of this. I think we did a fantastic job. Thank you to all SD2 staff. They've been outstanding. Thank you to the media. The media has been very gracious for SD2 and my office in allowing us to communicate appropriately. And then a big thank you to Billings Clinic and our hospital corridor. We're great partners with St. V's too. They've been instrumental in assisting us through this and all that. And what's really interesting is I have a daughter that's an ICU nurse in Kalispell, and she has been on the COVID unit. So this has been a little more personal to me too, from that standpoint. And a big shout out to our healthcare workers for the support that they've given us, the grocery clerks, the truck drivers. I mean, everyone did their job, Shoots, and they've done it well so far. All right, very good. Well, thank you, and thank you for all the work that you've done and all the work that Billings Public Schools has done. I know you. It's been an incredible effort and a huge effort. So thank you to you as well, and thanks for coming on to give us an update. We really do appreciate it. Thank you, Shoots. You bet.
This program is brought to you by Eide Bailey, a proud supporter and partner of Community 7 Television, where we're building community through communication. From the city to the county, there's a lot that makes up our unique community here in Montana, including our school systems. Each month, our partnership brings you the details about our schools, our community, and your tax dollars at work. Eide Bailey and Community 7, building community through communication.